see so many faces, old and new, old friends and new friends. So look, it goes without saying it's been a phenomenally challenging year for us and for so many of our businesses and partners. I guess our thoughts, first of all, obviously go out to Claire, to the hospitals and care homes and those on the front line who have had to deal with so much challenge and I guess trauma in many respects, been incredibly difficult. But I guess then moving on from a business perspective, ours is a city region that's so built around our fantastic hospitality, tourism, leisure, and retail offer, so critical to the city region, and that's taken a heck of a beating over the course of the last 9 months. But you've got folks, business owners who vested all of their savings and lost those over the course of the last 9 months. Those who've lost jobs and livelihoods. And worst of all, of course, those who've lost family and friends and colleagues. So it's we all have our own little moans and what have you, don't we, about what we're having to deal with. And those of you who've got kids, that they struggle to understand why we're getting so het up about it all, and shouldn't we just be letting them do what they want to do. It's been an incredibly challenging year, and it just feels appropriate that we've come to the end of the year. It's a time to reflect on what we've faced, what we've done, and what the future holds for us. Normally this time of year we'd be getting together with friends and colleagues from the visitor economy sector. In fact, their board meeting is going on right now as we speak, and I see you were at that a little bit earlier on, and we'd get together and have a few beers and some great networking or what have you. We typically do that this time of year. Well, clearly we can't, and a Zoom meeting's no substitute for that. But what we will do today is we'll spend some time going through what we've been doing sort of on your behalf, with you, for you, supported by you over the course of the last few months. We'll hear from some of you, some of our partners, in terms of what your experiences have. I don't know if you've volunteered to do that, which is very kind, to just share your perspectives both on how things have been and how you think the coming weeks and months will shape up. And then we'll have a look forward ourselves to what you can expect from Growth Platform, what we're planning to do. We'll hear from the wonderful Garth Dallas, who's working with us on an interesting project. I won't steal his thunder. We'll talk about that a little bit later for us, and then to round things off, Asif's going to give his reflections as chair of the LEP on what the year has been like, what we've been doing, but also his thoughts on the future. And we'll get all of that done by 4 o'clock. So it'll be a whirlwind. We've not got lots of spare time, but if you have got any questions or any points, or if there are any things that you think we should particularly focus on that you perhaps don't think we've stressed enough, or we haven't even mentioned at all, that you think we should be doing, as we've said from the outset, our relationship with you as our growth partners is very much for you to inform and shape the work that we do. And we've put together the programme for the year, very much built around the discussions we've had over the last 12 months or so. And certainly as we move into our new financial year, which starts in April, we'll have a meeting in March, where we'd very much like your thoughts about where do you think the focus should be, what can we do that would really make a difference to our economy, and how would you like to be involved. So that's the plan for our session. I hope that's okay. If I'm screwed, basically, if that's not to your satisfaction, because that's what we've planned for. So with that, I shall move on to just a little bit of a scene setting and talk through our activity for the last 3 months or so. Basically, just to give perhaps a little bit of context of what we've done and why we've done it. When we last spoke around September time, we were still slightly heady, I guess, from coming out of the first wave and being focused on recovery plans and comprehensive spending review, what that was going to look like, what we would be asking of government, how we could drive our economy forward and look forward to recovery. But that sort of, I guess, that optimism and that positivity sort of very quickly subsided as with the emergence of the second wave of the pandemic, and we kind of reverted our focus onto supporting and sustaining our businesses again, as we had done through the first 5 or 6 months of the pandemic, and that was both through Tier 3 designation, and then obviously through national lockdown, and now back into Tier 2. But I think it's only fair to say we pay a huge sort of debt of recognition to our local politicians, led by the Metro Mayor Steve Rotham, and to all of our LA colleagues and chief execs and directors and leaders and co, who took some very tough and unpopular decisions at a very difficult time that saw us enter into Tier 3. Took a huge amount of criticism for them at the time those decisions were made. They were absolutely the right decisions, both for the protection of life and lives across the city region, but more importantly, for the whole of our community, and ultimately for business, because it's that alongside the really proactive and groundbreaking sort of mass testing that was rolled out in Liverpool as a groundbreaker for the UK that's allowed us to enter into Tier 2. And given our beleaguered health and hospitality and leisure sector, a sort of a fighting chance to get some kind of Christmas season in, on which we know they're so dependent. So, and you only have to look at places like Manchester and London now, who didn't take those actions, are now still in Tier 3, and the cost that comes to the economy. So I think it's, we in Growth Platform and the LAC work very closely with the local authorities in this. We're hugely appreciative of the work that they've done, and we were the first place to get this discretionary set of funding to support those businesses missed by the various government schemes. So huge thanks and credit to all of them on everyone's behalf. I could be probably here all afternoon to talk through the various things that we've done. I'll just try and give you a few highlights, if I may. Probably the headline figure is that we've supported over 5,000 businesses since April, with over 10,000 interventions. And most of that has been around helping businesses make sense of the kind of slightly chaotic and sort of scene of various government schemes, making sure from CBILS to bounce back loans to furlough to everything else in between, make sense of it, make sure that they're claiming it and putting their applications in, etc. So the funding needed to support businesses was huge during certainly the first wave, and remains so in the second wave. So an awful lot of our work was focused on that. As we moved into the sort of summer and then the autumn, our focus was on making sure the the Combined Authorities growth programs that we were working with them on, that were really filled, and businesses took advantage of those. Things like the Future Innovation Fund, which provides funding for businesses to adapt and develop in the face of the pandemic, the businesses. And then sort of collaborative projects like Gather and Sustain, run by Form. And through all of that, we've worked with about 500 businesses directly to help them take advantage of those funds or get onto those programs, and with that become better equipped to face the future. So that's certainly been a huge part of our task. And I have to say, many of the staff at Growth Platform have been working full tilt, many long hours over the course of the last few months in filling those programs and making sure businesses get access to that. And also, in that vein, we secured funding for a recovery grant program, about just over £1 million for businesses in the visitor economy and more broadly. That's been a huge task. We've handled over 1,000 applications from businesses, been able to support 400 of those businesses with grants to, again, help them to adapt towards recovery. Just administering these things is massive, but the feedback we've had from businesses, just when staff are down, I don't know how you found it with your colleagues, when you're working hard and long hours, every now and then you just get a little nugget from someone who's taken the time and the care just to say something simple. I just wanted to say that you've become a lifeline for our business, and we don't know where we'd be without you. You just, the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end, and you just want to, it just reminds you that that's what you do all of this for helping people get through this, when it's been difficult. And many of you run businesses, and running a business can be a lonely place when you're having difficult decisions to make. So supporting those folks who are in those lonely places, running businesses, taking tough decisions is what we're about, and we're here to help them as much as we can. One of our big successes this year has been our business resilience support program. We went out to tender on that, and BDO won that tender, and they've supported over 100 businesses through that program with a kind of health check, diagnostic, and then session with the leadership teams in those businesses. Again, that's been really powerful. A lot of positive feedback from businesses. In fact, one business who's, I won't name him for embarrassment, but he's a really sharp entrepreneur, but also a little bit cynical about public-backed funding, schemes, etc. But he actually said it was the best bit of business consultancy he'd had in 20 years, and really made a difference to his business. So again, that program was certainly successful, and a lot of these things are kind of filling the gaps where other commercial services wouldn't have operated because there's a market failure, usually on the basis that businesses can't afford this sort of support, particularly when it's most needed. And the latest in that series of things is a suite of peer networks, which we're working with delivery partners to support about 150 business leaders in small cohorts of 10 or so, to work together on resilience over the course of the next 3 months through to the end of March. A whole raft of stuff in business support. I've just kind of given you some highlights there. And just some of the other areas of our businesses growth platform, just touch on those a little. Sector growth is clearly a big part of what we do. One of our unique strengths, I guess, is the deep sector knowledge that colleagues have, and the boards that we run, from health and life science, digital and creative, business and professional services, whole raft of boards that have folks on it that can inform and shape the needs of those sectors. Those boards have been critical in this pandemic period. Really helped give us a guidance and a steer to what's critical. We've strengthened those. We've created a couple of new boards: a built environment board and a clean growth board, just in the throes of getting a maritime and logistics board up and running in conjunction with Mersey Maritime. So we make sure we have these kind of strategic boards in each significant area of the business, of the city regions business. We've got new account management resources we've brought in, particularly to support manufacturing and digital businesses, and in the visitor economy, again, to provide extra support for those businesses with kind of one-to-one support. Probably the highlights for sector colleagues, certainly the biggest event that we've been involved in was the Digital Manufacturing Conference, which we had pioneered bringing here. It's Europe's largest digital manufacturing conference. We pioneered bringing it here from the NEC in Birmingham about 3 years ago. It's grown, hand over fist each year. But this year was really challenging. We had to go digital with it, which, as you can imagine, you can see the shots on screen at the moment that Carolyn shared. It looks like a real conference and exhibition, but it was all done virtually. And we had over 3,000 manufacturers from all over the world attended that conference, and we had a sort of an exhibition space in there, etc. So really groundbreaking piece of work. Hopefully next year we'll be back to having a physical event where at the ACC, where we've held it for the last 3 years. But it's just one of the ways in which we've had to adapt our business to meet the challenges of having to work remotely. Place marketing, similarly, been very difficult in the absence of being able to, promote the city regions VE in a great way. The restrictions on travel, even locally and within the UK. So that space has been difficult, but we've made a lot of progress behind the scenes, which you've probably not seen much of yet. But you will see next year. We've sorted all our brand narrative work out. We've aligned that with the messaging coming out of the Good Business Festival. We've got a repository of resources and a partnership agreement in place with Marketing Liverpool to use Invest Liverpool to do all of that. We've got all of that resource in place. And whilst it might have seemed a very odd time to have a celebratory event for the visitor economy sector, we took soundings from the sector, because we hold tourism awards every year. Some of you, I'm sure most of you have been to those awards. Fantastic celebration of everything great in the city region's visitor economy. We decided to hold a virtual remote tourism awards, slightly madly the same week as we were doing Manufacturing Digital Week, but we normally hold that in the cathedral or other great venue in the city. But that event, again, was just a reminder of what brilliance we've got in that sector, despite everything they've struggled through. It was just, it was really humbling and heartwarming to, hear the determination and the passion from the dozens of businesses that were in there, was shortlisted, and those that won. We've got wonderful people, wonderful businesses in that space. They deserve all of our support and credit, and it's them that makes this such a brilliant place to attract millions of visitors each year. So we held that virtual event, huge success, massive trending on Twitter and everything else. So credit to Carolyn and the team who helped put that on at MSP Studios. So brilliant piece of work there. Just to touch on a couple of other areas. Inward investments, one of our key areas of responsibility. As you can imagine, the foreign direct investment pretty much fallen off a cliff nationally and internationally. Again, a lot of work gone on behind the scenes, and interestingly, we're starting to see some projects in the last month. 4 of the projects the team have been working on in various sectors have been confirmed, leading to a couple of hundred additional jobs. But I'll talk a little bit more later on what our plans are for the future, because certainly as we head into the spring next year, our plans are to really drive forward our competitive value propositions in a joint way with our local authority partners and with business, to take those into the market, to reposition Liverpool City region as a global player, both in investments and in trade. So lots to talk about in the future in that space. A lot of our skills work with schools has had to go online. We've now got a careers hub that covers all senior schools for the city region, which we undertake on your behalf. That works all online, but great progress being made. And we've got a skills brokerage service that's available to all businesses that are looking to understand how they can improve their skill sets. A lot of businesses taken advantage of that, even while staff have been on furlough. We've helped over 400 small businesses with training and staff or apprenticeships, and thanks to businesses, larger organisations who pay the levy and had unused apprenticeship levy, have agreed to transfer over £1 million of that levy, and our team have used that to create 264 apprenticeships in local businesses. Probably the best example is one from NHS, where one of the NHS trusts, effectively gifted over some of their unspent apprenticeship levy, and that went to creating 14 apprentices at a local care home that again otherwise would not have been funded and happened. So lots of brilliant examples of generosity and thought going in, and our team being able to take advantage of all of that. And just finally, a little bit on EU exit. Clearly, we all expected to have some clarity by, well, I think mid-October, late October was given as one of the last deadlines. Well, we're still in sort of mid-December, and we don't quite know, although some of us were just speculating at the start of this meeting. It's starting to feel like there may be, the UK has realised that Europe's not going to capitulate, and we're maybe on the cusp of a deal that recognises that no deal would be worse than the concessions that we'd have to make to get a deal. So let's hope that we see that deal in place. But just so you're aware, we have engaged with BEIS and got some support to enable us to drive forward with support for businesses looking at EU exits. I'll talk a little bit about that later. And rather than there's so much speculation and noise, isn't there, on the media about Brexit, and often you get political positions. So we took the decision to engage with a wonderful chap called Anand Menon. Those of you, I know some of you on this call attended our session last week on Friday. A real tour de force by Anand, as we come to expect. He's the director of the UK in a Changing Europe think tank. It's award-winning. He's on the radio and TV and Today programme all the time. He was on Question Time on Thursday last week. Very candid, very knowledgeable, backed by a fantastic team. So that was a super event. And again, it was a lovely comment from one of our chamber partners who said, really helped us to understand clearly what's going on with the EU and exit, what it means and what the challenges will be, and thanks for putting that on. So we've agreed to, in chatting with Anand, we've agreed to work closely with him and his team. There's some extra work he's done, so we'll be in the process of sharing that with you as we get more of that in the days and weeks ahead. So listen, I've cantered through that 20 minutes. Sorry, it was a bit whistle stop, but I just wanted to get a sense of what we've been doing. We've probably worked with twice the number of businesses we would have done by this time in a year in the last 12 months, and a massive credit to the team. We've got a growth platform who just, despite working long hours, remain positive and upbeat and do everything they can to support the businesses. So big credit to them. Enough from me for now. Thank you for being patient and listening to that. What I would like to do now is give you a chance to hear from some of our partners who offered to give a little bit of insight of their world, what they're facing, and perhaps what they're hoping for. Not from Santa, but in the year ahead, and kind of reached first to you, Ben, at ACCL. Ben's Ben Williams, the commercial director of ACC. I wonder if you can share. Probably start because you've had probably the worst possible year that you beyond what you would have thought possible. Just how you've got through it, and where do we go from here?
Thank you, Mark, and good afternoon, everybody. So ACC Liverpool venues closed at the end of March in line with the first national lockdown. And since then, we've been focused on working with and supporting our clients and preparing for reopening, initially with COVID-19 secure protocols and procedures in place. And we now hold multiple industry COVID safe accreditations. However, during the time we've had no public events, we have repurposed our buildings, and we have been open throughout, initially for the distribution of food, and then for PPE, and then more recently in the Exhibition Centre Liverpool around the mass testing operation, which was fantastic opportunity for the city and the city region, and obviously was a contributing factor to obviously after the second national lockdown going into tier 2, which was just so massively important for the visitor economy sector. So what that meant for us was that we could stage events up to 1,000 capacity, but only for one day. There's no multi-day conferences currently allowed under tier 2. So it is still quite restrictive. However, we have had some events resume. On December the 10th, we hosted a downtown business event in the convention centre, and that was notable for pioneering smart testing. So all of the attendees for that event were required to take a lateral flow test and get a negative result before they're actually allowed entry into the venue. And then we followed that up at the weekend, something completely different with the Hot Water Comedy Club in the auditorium. And that was quite notable. It allowed us to sort of test some new technology around actually ordering and click and collect, which was not without its issues, but we've learned a lot of lessons for that, which will help us because we're going into a series of arena concert events this weekend. So these are all socially distanced with a local promoter, Chaz Cole. So it's a classic Christmas rock show and a couple of shows by a tribute act, Rumours of Fleetwood Mac. And then it wouldn't be Christmas without a pantomime. So we do have a pantomime this year, and Jack and the Beanstalk launches in the auditorium on the 18th as well. So looking ahead to next year, we are lobbying behind the scenes alongside a lot of industry partners for a return to full capacity events as soon as possible, with the developments in smart testing and of course the vaccination programme. And on my list for Santa this year, alongside a crystal ball, I would very much like central government to back an insurance scheme to rebuild organiser and promoter confidence. So we're lobbying very hard for that. We're expecting a phased return to business events from sort of April. And we have got some large scale conferences in the diary. So we've got the Royal College of Nurses returning, Unison and Unite booked in May, June and July. Full capacity arena concerts should resume from the summer, but not with a full programme really until the autumn. And our schedule does include Diana Ross, Simply Red and Elton John. So it's going to be great to get back to full scale events, although in our scenario forecasting, we think next year, it's going to be a transitional year. It's not going to be, it's probably going to be 50% of what a normal year would look like for us. And the recovery initially is going to be domestic and very competitive. So we've adopted a strategy around protecting, capturing and acquiring events. At this point, I'd like to thank Pete Salmon and his team at the Growth Platform. We've worked with to successfully repurpose the growing business tourism SIF monies so we can support this strategy as of now until March 2023. So I'll be glad to see the back of this year. There is some light at the end of the tunnel, but next year is still going to be not without its challenges, but it can only get better.
There's a song in there somewhere, I think, Ben. No, it's sobering, but great that you. I was expecting to be a little depressed from hearing from you, but I feel uplifted by that. Great that you're really planning to take things on, and as I say, we're none of us know exactly how it's going to go, but great. It would be brilliant to see those big acts back in the arena in the summer and beyond. Going to turn now to Tim Bullock from London North Western, a really different, a wholly different business and a wholly different set of challenges, but equally massively challenging for you. Tim, do you want to share with us how things have been for you?
Yeah. Do I have to follow on from Ben and be upbeat as well? Is that part of the parcel?
Just tell us. I'm really just keen to hear how you handling being in the business that you are, and what do you think that the future's that holds for you and the return for people travelling and commuting.
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone. So I am Tim Bullock. I'm partnerships manager for London North Western Railway. We were joined the growth platform at the start of this year. So yeah, we kind of came into this with so many shared opportunities and so much potential. And it's been a difficult one overall, I'd say. So bit about us. So London North Western Railway, we are the green trains that serve Liverpool Lime Street. We connect Liverpool with Birmingham and London as well. So our route goes from Liverpool down south through the Potteries into Birmingham and out sort of down through the West Coast Main Line. So effectively like the M1 of the railways into London as well. So we also operate we've got West Midlands Railway as well. So we operate both those brands. And we're also a sister TOC to Merseyrail. I don't know if you're probably aware of that, but we share the same parent company as Merseyrail, so very closely linked in with the team over there as well. And obviously Liverpool was a growth market to us. We had great aspirations for increasing the number of passengers on that route, and so to that end we've been partnering up with quite a lot of people around the city. So we work with Marketing Liverpool very closely, culture, also the ACC as well, and really, our aspirations at the start of the year were to try and bring in new as much leisure passengers as we could really from down south. So that was the target, and then obviously 2020 has happened and it's not quite worked out like that. So just to kind of lay out exactly what sort of happened in train world. We, as soon as COVID struck, we obviously lost a lot of passengers straight away. So our patronage at one point was down to about 5% of where it normally would be. And I suppose through March and April, the messaging was all about necessary travel only. And as a sales manager, I found myself in the very strange position of having to tell people not to use our services unless they absolutely had to. So we were working with partners at that point to really kind of make sure that people were well informed about travel messaging. We obviously were there for key workers, so that was the messaging at that point in time was, we're here for people who absolutely need us to travel to work. But obviously the pressure was on to try and ensure that social distancing was still easily achievable on our trains, and our timetable went down to sort of about 50% of where it would normally be in terms of the level of trains. The DfT have stepped in with all train operators. Obviously it's an unsustainable position to have no passengers but still run a service, so we are working under the DfT at the moment, and there was an emergency measures agreement that was put in place back in March, April time, that effectively made us and all train operators reporting to the DfT. That's since been replaced in September with like a more of a recovery agreement, but we are still again working under the DfT. All train operators find themselves in that position, and so the messaging has been a line from government really. We're still not really marketing wise, we're still not pushing our own brand. It's still very much neutral messaging. Focus is all about sort of cleanliness of trains, emphasising the safety elements really, and just being there for people who do need us. So I said about passenger numbers dropped down to about 5%. They edged their way back up from sort of that point. And I'd suppose at one point, like probably July, August time, we were probably about 30% of our normal passenger numbers. Clearly, those are across both our brands. So West Midlands Railway is a bit more of a commuter network, so that would have recovered a bit quicker than the longer distance markets, as you'd imagine. But yeah, we got up to about 30%, and then obviously as the messaging changed again and it was work from home if you can, we noticed our passenger numbers dropping back down again. It's currently around sort of 20% of what we'd normally expect around this time of year. Our timetable, on the other hand, is back up to 100% really. So we've tried not to kind of do too much of a hokey cokey around the timetables. We've kept it as it is really in terms of the capacity. So we're in a very fortunate position where we've got all our trains running. The amount of seats that we've got running is pretty much the same as it was pre-COVID. and the passenger numbers are still quite low. So we've never really had an issue with social distancing where we've had to kind of enforce too heavily our position, and so thankfully we've been there for people who've needed us this year, which is great. But next year, I guess, is all about recovery for us, and as an industry, it's about getting people back. Obviously, when the time is right. We still have the same ambitions to promote Liverpool and to work with you all as partners in the city as well, whether that's on the leisure, whether that's sort of business as well. And I wouldn't be doing my job as a sales manager if I didn't quickly give a bit of promotion to a business product that we have got launching at the moment, which we would plan to launch back in March time, actually, was like a business travel service. And so that was that's something that we've now got planned for January this year. So we are going to be introducing a new business travel product. So predominantly at the SME market, for those who probably book their travel themselves or ad hoc. We are going to be stepping into that market with a free travel product as well. So that's something I'd probably talk a bit more about in the new year as well. But we'll be really excited to launch that, and I think that will hopefully start to see us bringing business back, really.
Oh, great. It's vital to have the efficient train service in the city region. So important from a visitor perspective as well as from a business perspective. And it's great to have you working with us, Tim. And I know you probably couldn't have had a worse year, could you? Say it's sod's law.
I think we've lost
Mark. I was going to say, is that, sorry, Mark.
God's law that we've lost Mark.
You're just about to launch a new product. And,
Mark, we're losing you. We lost you a little bit then.
Okay, so, sorry. Well, with that, I'll hand. Thanks, Tim. Thanks for that. We'll make sure we share the information you've got.
Thank you.
On that scheme at the right time. Can I hand over to Andy McFarlane from Curtains? What sort of years it been in the construction and the development sector, Andy?
Certainly challenging, I think would be the way to put it. So it's very, very interesting. So and just by way of introduction, really, my name's Andy McFarlane. I'm Director of Curtains Liverpool office, and I see a lot of familiar faces on the call, but maybe a few people might not know Curtains as well. So those who aren't so familiar, we're civil engineering, structural engineering consultants based in Liverpool, but we're a national business. We have 14 offices around the UK, but very much Liverpool HQ and a Liverpool focused company. And interestingly, 2020 is our 60th anniversary since being founded in Liverpool. So it started as a year of great plans of kind of celebration and looking forward to the next decade ahead. And we got to March and plans changed somewhat, really, as we have all experienced. So it's been an interesting year, and I suppose the key experiences for us really would be certainly in March, the decant from home very quickly, really. We, as engineering consultants, we're working on probably 250 live projects across the business at any one time, and those projects are ranging in size from hundreds of £1 million master plans and hospitals down to individual house extensions. So each of those projects were affected in very different ways, really, and across a changing backdrop of decanting a workforce of about 450 people from an office-based environment to a home-based environment, really. So a lot of challenges came out at that time, actually, but ultimately it was very successful, almost kind of overnight, really. We got people up and running at home, and project continued, and thereon then became a period, really, of trying to make sense of what individual projects were going to do, and every project had its own drivers, really, of how it was funded, how it would go forward, what stage it was. But the overwhelming thing we found was that the enthusiasm and desire, really, across the construction industry and across our peers to continue and to find collaborative and innovative ways to keep projects on the tracks. And some of that involved reworking designs at short notice to respond to social distancing and COVID secure sites. So a lot of rework and a lot of effort was put in, almost behind the scenes, quietly out of the spotlight, just to keep these sites operational and running, really. And I do very strongly feel that a lot of that work, it's kind of almost happened a bit behind the scenes where the focus has been elsewhere. It's going to be massively to the benefit of everyone, really, as a kind of a city and as a region, I think, going forward, really, because those projects are going to be to huge benefit of all. And as we sit here now, I'm currently just finalising our 2021 business plan, which is an interesting task, really, trying to look anywhere beyond sort of 6 weeks ahead. So it's it's certainly going to be a business plan with challenges in it, really, and a lot of challenges of 2020 are going to go forward into 2021. Really, we don't envisage having a workforce fully back in the office anytime soon. We're at about 50% occupancy in a COVID secure way, and we foresee that probably being the status quo for the next 12 months, really. So that kind of mix of home working and office working is certainly the new normal for us. When we look back financially, really, we can see almost the impacts have been a reduction in turnover. We probably somewhere between 15 and 20%, almost all of our offices, really. It's been relatively consistent, actually, when it's played out. The biggest impact being on the kind of the private sector work. A lot of the public sector work has carried on regardless, and stages of carried on and construction activities carried on. A lot of the impact has actually been on more of the private sector work, and actually not so much work continuing, but the commissioning of next stages of work or projects being put on hold for 3 months has been the biggest impact. So again, yeah, we take confidence from next year. We kind of say we're cautiously optimistic, really. I think as a business, we go into next year in a fortunate position of being kind of financially stable and having a strong portfolio of work. And although there will be a lot of kind of uncertainty and risk, I'm sure, in the world next year, we feel as confidently placed as we could be, I suppose, to deal with that. And yeah, and all being well, I think as we go into next year, we'll be able to move forward and kind of celebrate maybe our 60+1 anniversary, really, and have a bit of an overdue party maybe to celebrate that. So.
Well, as someone who reached the 60 mark themselves, my own celebrations were kind of put on hold. So maybe we can have a joint party, Andy.
I think we should, shouldn't we?
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, listen, you've survived and thrived in 60 years, and there's been a lot of challenges over that period, and it's good to hear that you're in good shape despite all the challenges you've had this year, because you're a vital part of our ecosystem, our built environment ecosystem in the city region. So, really important that you continue to do so, and obviously anything we can do to help you in that space, we'd be delighted to Andy. Finally, thank you for that. Finally, last but not least, Claire Morgan, who's Director of Strategy at Liverpool University Hospitals Trust. I don't think any of us, Claire, can imagine what your last 9 months has been like, but I don't know if you can try and encapsulate a bit of that and a bit of forward thinking in 3 or 4 minutes. That would be quite a task. I'd love to hear from you.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, so it's been a year, shall we say. So I joined the Trust at the end of March, so it's been a bit of a baptism of fire. So I'll give you a bit of an overview, really, of kind of some of the things that we've kind of lived through. It's fair to say that we have not been short of business over the last 12 months. So we at Love, we're one of the high consequences infectious diseases unit. So our first COVID patients started coming into us at the end of February. So we've kind of been living this from February, and certainly in the first wave, we hit 380 inpatients at kind of the peak, as it were. So about 1,500 patients came through in that first wave and were treated. And I think, it's fair to say at that point there were so many variables. It was such an unknown disease, and we had a session with our board this morning where one of our infectious diseases consultants was talking about COVID-19 and just this impact on health that they'd never seen before, and some managing just the plummeting in kind of oxygen saturation, and just something that was completely new in the context of PPE, in the context of all that uncertainty, has been phenomenal, really. And I think for me, so I lead on a number of areas, but research and innovation sits within my portfolio. And I think there's never been a greater time to be able to celebrate and see so tangibly where research and innovation fits into the system. So in that first wave, we didn't have any treatments. It was best endeavours. We had the National Recovery Trial, which had different arms. At that point, we were looking at vaccines, and actually Liverpool was the highest recruiter to the Oxford vaccine study, higher than Oxford. So lots of kind of research going on in the background. So we, you know, and that was all very much balanced in the kind of the pressures of staff absence and, you know, everything really. But I think, you know, the clapping, the support, the national kind of love for the NHS absolutely helped and certainly carried everybody through. And I think, you know, we all kind of came into the summer with a sigh of relief, thinking, knowing that, you know, there was likely to be a second wave. But I don't think any of us had kind of anticipated that we would top the leaderboard quite so quickly. And there's leaderboards that you don't want to be part of. And, you know, being at the top in terms of COVID admissions so quickly, you know, we at our peak in wave 2, we had 475 admissions into the trust, so higher than the first wave. And that all came on really quite quickly. And like I say, we were first to go in the country. And so trying to balance that with our elective care and managing the expectations of all those patients who, you know, have patiently waited over that period for their treatments to then obviously have the onslaught of a second wave. And it's the resilience of staff, you know. I know all of us have dug deep, and there's resilience that none of us ever thought we ever had. But that constant, you know, is going into that second wave. You know, our staff are tired, but they're still continuing to do an amazing job. And I think coming back to the research aspect, our mortality was so much lower, our health outcomes were so much better because of research and that evidence that we generated in that first wave, of which Liverpool was absolutely core. We, in terms of research funding investment from the UKRI, we were number 3 in the country behind UCL and Oxford in terms of securing research funding. So we've really punched above our weight this, you know, during this, and there's an awful lot of lessons that we've learned, both from a clinical care perspective, but also from a research and innovation perspective that, you know, absolutely we build on as an organisation as we come out of this, and as a healthcare system. So, you know, we had a grand plan. We merged the 2 organisations in October, gosh, what year? 2019. So, you know, things were progressing well, and obviously we had our first patients in February. So really kind of early days in terms of looking at some of that opportunity that we will still pull through from having a single NHS trust, and you know, some of the opportunities that will afford. Some of those things are absolutely now kind of picking up pace, and we've quietened down again, certainly in terms of admissions. And you know, we absolutely thank the people of Liverpool and mass testing and to take us into tier 2. I think we've got to be, and then it's been really exciting over the last fortnight to be one of the vaccine hubs. And we've run that out of Aintree just because of the sheer logistics of the Pfizer vaccine. That's been kind of run out of Aintree, and we've started to vaccinate our over 80s and our and some of our more vulnerable staff, but also our healthcare workers in A&E and in ICU were kind of our priorities, and then moving that forward. So that just feels a real glimmer of hope. I mean, it's, you know, we've got a long way to go yet, but you know, that's just all felt really kind of positive. So we go into next year, I think, you know, probably thinking we will have a third wave. You know, we're kind of absolutely kind of prepared for that. Certainly in light of the, you know, the kind of bubbles at Christmas, and we're just kind of watching and waiting and planning for that. And I think, you know, what we're really focused on is how do we get through backlogs that we will have in terms of patient care. You know, we've absolutely kept our priority services running, and, you know, absolute, you know, commendation to our clinical staff who've prioritised all of that care. But we have a backlog that we will, you know, absolutely need to kind of work through, which, you know, is going to be really challenging in light of infection prevention control and bed spacing and all of the things that, you know, we never even thought about this time last year. We've got a lot of learnings from COVID, which is really, really positive, and a lot of system working that we probably didn't have before. So that all feels great. And then we have, I know you specifically asked to mention, we have the new Royal to look forward to. You know, we're kind of talking spring 2022 for that, and really grateful to Lango Rourke, who put in amazing kind of COVID risk mitigation, and a lot of that building work continued as planned during that period, and we're not too far off track. So an exciting year. Still lots of uncertainty, as it has been for everybody, you know, all for very different reasons. But, you know, I think really showed the strength of the system working, which, you know, absolutely we need to capitalise and build upon.
Thank you so much, Claire. It's humbling to hear you describe what the year you've faced. I mean, we probably all feel we've been through a hell of a year, but I don't think it's anything in comparison with what you and colleagues have faced. And if you could, on all of our behalves, I'm sure I speak for everyone on this call, and certainly everyone in the LEP and Growth Platform, if you could pass on our sincere thanks and gratitude to all of your colleagues for what you've done for the people of this city region, we'd be really grateful. It really is humbling and very special what you've achieved. Thank you. How do you follow that? Difficult, but if there's one person who can follow that, it's Garth Dallas. I don't know how many of you know Garth. He's a friend of ours, and he came to talk to our LEP board in the summer about the things going on with the Good Business Festival, which itself has had to massively compromise and change its shape and form. Inspired our board, and he and I have been chatting about how do we make the Good Business Festival, and the prospects of you know, how do we return to, you know, some normality, and what does the future look like as businesses? How do we become better businesses? And how can that work for smaller businesses? We hear lots of corporates talking about, you know, becoming good B Corps, you know, for all sorts of reasons, but how do we make it work for small businesses? We're very short on time, but Garth, can I just hand over to you for a few minutes just to talk about what we've got planned over the coming months and how you'd like people to engage?
Thanks for having me. Thanks very much, Mark. I know we've only got a few minutes, but I will actually go back even before I did the presentation to the LEP board in the summer, because I am the head of collaborations for the Good Business Festival, and one of the very first meetings I had when I took the position in December last year, started in January, was actually with Mark Basnett. I met with Mark because I immediately knew, even back then, that whatever we did with the Good Business Festival, the LEP needed to be all over this. The LEP needed, in my opinion, to create that legacy aspect of the Good Business Festival, because it's all good and well for us to be talking all these great conceptualized stuff about what is good and how a business is good, but at the end of the day, there has to be that sense of place around it, and we want Liverpool City Region to be in this process seen as a good place to do business because businesses are good. So we had to look at what our ecosystem is. We've got a lot of small businesses, and a lot of those are micro businesses. So we wanted to make sure that the LEP takes control of that legacy aspect, to make sure that when we finish the Good Business Festival, or whatever we do as we go along, there is that legacy left in the city region. And that conversation went on when we launched in January, and the chair was there as well, Asif, and Asif said to me, God, we're all over this, we're all over this. And we finally got there now, where we've got this arrangement with the LEP, via the Growth Platform, where we've just created a project called the Good Small Business Program. And what we're looking to do with that is to work with Liverpool City Region small businesses to develop this whole narrative of what is good and what does good look like in our city region. Mark mentioned the B Corp. There's so many other kite marks out there. We don't believe that we should just jump onto any of these. We want to work with the businesses in the city region to make sure that we create something which has Liverpool City region all over it. As Mark said earlier on, the whole narrative is being linked to the Good Business Festival, Liverpool here for good. All this whole stuff is. The time is right. I know it's been a difficult period, but I do believe that Liverpool small businesses will come out of this and can come out of this with something tangible as to what is in it for them. How can we work with the universities? That's what I'm doing now in creating this collaborative partnership with the universities, with the Federation of Small Businesses, with the, all the other stuff that's going on in the city region around business engagement, the chambers of commerces. I know Neil Roscoe is on this call. He's seen me on various platforms. I'm working with Knowsley. I'm working with Liverpool. I'm working with the Wirral, all over the place to make sure that everyone understands that the Good Business Festival is not just a concept. We're making it real for businesses, and this Good Small Business Program is, all I can say is about time, and the energy is there, and we will be coming back to you all to make sure that you're part of this project going forward in 2021. It's a pilot which goes on until April. I have been seconded from the Good Business Festival to champion this, and I'm definitely all over this, and this partnership with the Growth Platform, I believe, is the right thing and the right time to ensure that our small businesses are in the process of understanding what good is and what is good business. Thank you.
Thanks, Garth. Look, we've got our own sort of dynamo. He's a human energy source is our Garth, and they're delighted to have you involved in the project. I know that you're going to put all of that fantastic energy of yours into making this happen. We'll be in touch with you as we get into January. We'll be looking for partners to pilot with this. It's about, as Garth said, it's about translating the principles of what's a good business, and how do you make that real within your own business? How do you adapt your business? How do you incorporate these good principles into the way that you run your business, so it becomes a purposeful business, and it generates profits through purpose in the right way. So it's not just a strategy, it's not just a concept, it's about, as Garth said, the simplicity, it's about making it real. So look, if you're interested in that, please get in touch with Garth or I. It's a real priority for us for next year. As I say, for that pilot, we're looking for folks to get involved with us, and we'll be in touch with you in more details. We're kind of out of time. I don't want to go over too much. I want to hand over in a minute to Asif just to make a few sort of closing observations and things. Just a sense of what to look forward to in the coming months. Certainly, as Claire said, we too are somewhat fearful of a third wave, and think certainly for the first quarter we'll be focusing on supporting businesses through recovery. We've seen about 800,000 redundancies nationally over the course of the last 9 months. We could be facing a similar number over the next 6. It's not going to be comfortable and easy for many businesses. We know that. So our job first and foremost is going to be to support them with the programs we have and introduce new programs, help businesses take access of the support that's available. But looking forward beyond that a little bit, as colleagues have, as Ben described, looking forward to the summer and towards the back end of next year, we'll be really focused on growth. We're focused on recovery and innovation and adaptation, absorption of innovation. A lot of our space will be covered in those things. And 2 big things that we want to focus on. This is our city region is a fantastic historic city region built on global trade, built on global investment. We haven't done enough of that in the last 20 years, and working with Stephen at Avison Young and colleagues with the MIPIM initiative and others, our plans are to take Liverpool City Region global in 2021-22 in all kinds of ways, both from a trade perspective, but also from an inward investment perspective. So we will talk far more about all of that when we get together again in March. We'll have an export plan for the city region that will really raise our bar and raise our aspirations. We'll have an investment marketing plan ready to roll out from April. We'll share all of that with you at the next meeting. Apologies, I've slightly overrun, all down to me talking too much. So with that, I will just say thank you so much for your continued support. We couldn't do what we do without your backing. You're a credit to the city region. You're the heartbeat of the city region, what you do, the support you give to the work we do. Thank you so much. And I'll leave it to you, Asif, to just say a few closing remarks. Thank you.
So thanks, Mark. And thank you, everybody, for all your support. I mean, Claire, fantastic job. I mean, you know, I'm glad I didn't have to follow you, because I was sat here worrying that I was following you, actually. So, but just a few words from me. I mean, this year has been an unbelievable year for each and every one of us sat on here and other people. I was on a call earlier today, actually, just before this one, with some other people. And I have to say the city region has changed, and we have, as individuals, have changed. Even myself as running a business, you know, I've got to say, the one thing that I always say to my senior management team, both here and abroad, is that, you know, the agility and having to make changes very, very quickly have been key to success and defining how a business goes forward. I think one of the things in the city region, I can tell you this, you know, the city region is probably in the best placed arena from a national perspective than anybody else. Every call I go on in the mornings now at 8 o'clock with government, Liverpool City Region is mentioned as a trailblazer. And I mean that with the attitude and the way we're doing things. We've got to continue, you know, some of the things such as the testing that we did the other day at the Echo Arena when they did the first show. That could be a real system of people being tested very quickly and being led into facilities and organisations. I know Everton Football Club for the Blues are doing the same thing, you know, to allow supporters in. So there's a lot more going on. I know, Claire, some of your team are involved in some of the initiatives that nationally have been set up. So there's a lot happening. I mean, you know, from a national point of view, you know, we were involved in the very, very early days of the furlough scheme, as Mark will tell you. And we, you know, and I have to give credit to the team at the LEP and Caroline and Mark. You know, I mean, some of the hours these guys put in behind the back scene is unbelievable. You know, I've seen Mark, you know, I've been talking to Mark at 4 o'clock in the morning during the early days and finishing off at 11 and 12 at night. And still, I knew if I pinged him an email, he'd respond back if it was 2:30 in the morning. So I told him to have copious amounts of wine and not do it. But, you know, the one thing I do want to say is that, you know, the future is brighter. You know, I think, you know, I'm worried about the third wave, as Claire said, and quite a few people have said. So, you know, we've got to be safe. But, you know, we are here to support you first and foremost, and, you know, to drive things forward. So if there's any ideas and thought process you can bring to us, you know, we're constantly talking to ministers and lobbying in any single area, you know, we can, and we can try and push businesses through. But the reality is that, you know, it is going to be hard. The next 12 months are going to be hard. And I think the undecisiveness of Brexit is going to be another thing. And I know there's a call tonight at 6 o'clock on it as well. So I think government are moving very, very quickly. I think it's a very, very difficult position to be in, and to make them decisions and to drive them forward. I think we will see some further announcements over the next week or two about what the plan is with Christmas and going out to Christmas. I think, you know, I was optimistic with, you know, right at the beginning, Claire, I was thinking we might get a tier 1. I think we all were. And I think, you know, the tier 2 is good compared to where I think London going into a lockdown tomorrow on a tier 3 is going to make changes to government. And I know we can say, well, it's just London, but I think you will see some changes to the tiers coming ahead. But generally, you know, as I said earlier, we're here to support you. I know it's a difficult transition as business leaders for every one of you here. And, you know, I've got to say, please, you know, give yourself some time to sit back and try and analyze and visualize where you've all been and where you've all come to. You know, survival mode is very, very difficult. And the amount of pressure on each and every one of you, you know, and you've got time now at Christmas, hopefully, to get a bit of time with your families, to relax, come back fresh, and let's see what we can do together jointly as a Liverpool City Region and as a business enterprise as well. So thank you, each and every one of you, for your support. It's great. I thank you, Mark and Caroline, for your fantastic job. And I want to say publicly in front of everybody, because I think behind the scenes, the amount of work that goes in, you know, even with Caroline not telling me that I'd left my boxer shorts lying around in the back of a Zoom call and texting all the other staff, and then telling me afterwards. And that was on a business call as well, and it was recorded. So I'm hoping clippets don't get sent anywhere. But, generally, listen, everybody, it's been a difficult year. There's no way we can get away from that. It's still a difficult period ahead of us. We've got to remain safe. We've got to support the NHS. We've got to support each and every one of us, and we've got to support our families, friends, and colleagues. So, on behalf of myself, thank you to each and every one of you. You know, without you, our city region wouldn't be where it is. Without the support of you, we would not be able to do half the things we do. You know, so thank you very much. It's never easy. We can never do the right things, but you know, we're here to support. So have a great Christmas. Have a good New Year. Let's all keep safe, and I look forward to seeing you all in the new year. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, folks. Can't say any more than that. Have a safe Christmas. Have a great one. Great to see you all. Can't wait. We are going to have one hell of a party when we can all get back together again, and we'll I don't know whether it's at a Steve's place or whatever.
I can assure. I will say the drinks are on me. There you go.
Let's look forward to that, but have a great Christmas break, and we'll speak to you early in the new year. Take care, and thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Bye, everyone. Bye.